Today on the Edge Zone podcast, we continue our contributor series welcoming Alexis, a process-driven bettor out of Florida who's quickly making waves in his first year as a full-time sports bettor. With a finance background, an MBA, and over a decade in analytical corporate roles, Alexis has brought that same discipline into betting, turning a $1,500 bankroll into nearly $10,000 in just 8 months. His DFS ROI this year alone has been off the charts, with returns north of 10% on multiple platforms. And now Alexis is coming on board as an exclusive contributor here at Edge Zone. Let's get into it.
You talking to me? You talking to me? Who the hell else are you talking? Talking to me?
So the object here is to win.
No dough, no show.
Sounds to me like you guys are a couple of bookies.
Show me the money.
All right, I'm here with Nick, the art father and founder of Edge Zone, along with Alexis, the newest contributor to the Edge Zone. How you guys doing today?
Great, man. Happy to be here.
Hell yeah, man. We're happy to have you. Shane and I are wicked pumped. You know, we kind of just talked about this right before we started recording, but something Shane and I aren't too savvy on at the moment is DFS, right? We both dabbled in it a little bit. I think I've been limited by a couple Underdogs accounts in the past, but this is kind of a new thing for us that we're going to be trying to get into as well as time goes on. And you kind of being a expert in this field is huge for the community.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling me an expert. That's very generous. No, but yeah, totally. I've definitely had a journey so far in DFS, being in Florida, and kind of just in my sports betting journey. That's the most readily available to me, right? So I have kind of grown some confidence in that space and hoping I can provide some value to the community. And I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, more value to the Edge Zone is exactly what we're looking for, man. And your results show exactly that. So give us a little bit of background. You've been leaning heavily into DFS because of where you are. Break down why you've had such a strong ROI on some of these platforms, bettor, underdog, dabble. Give us some metrics on those and sort of the difference between attacking DFS to a traditional sportsbook.
Yeah, so it's been interesting, right, my journey, because I started off towards the end of last year. I mean, prior to that, I played a little bit on Hard Rock and did some underdog parlays here and there towards the end of last year, but I didn't really understand the math behind it at all. Like, I understood the basics of betting. If something is favored, it's in the right, it's a negative number. If something's positive, the higher number it is, the less likely it is to come true theoretically, right? That's how the odds are supposed to be priced. But I didn't really understand like the payouts and what the implied odds of that or anything in underdog, for example. So I kind of just started finding really smart people on Twitter. Kind of shout out to obviously like the OGs, Alex, right? I don't know how many people know Sports by Dustin, but I just like started listening to them and I was like, okay, theoretically what they're talking about in terms of expected value makes sense, right? If you're consistently beating closing line value and you know what the implied odds are for your slips, depending on how many legs you have in your parlay, right? Like at that point, it just becomes math. And I was like, everything they're saying makes sense theoretically, but then I needed to test it out. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to just blindly follow these guys. So I kind of started with bet sizes that range between $1 and $3. To start off January, February, I was tailing them. I didn't really have a subscription to any software yet. I was just kind of tailing them and kind of learning with those small bets, kind of learning what to look for. And then eventually I got my own subscription, and I kind of, once I did that for a couple months, I was like, okay, this is legit. I'm willing to invest in this and continue to grow. And just spending the time learning, like I said, right? Learning from smart people, understanding what you're actually betting, right? Because, depending if you bet a 2-man on underdog versus a 3-man or a 6-man, those are all different odds that you're getting, and the edges that you get are bigger. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I just feel like that was all things that I kind of did to start my journey, compared to just like betting on a random sports book, like Hard Rock, for example. I used to just bet if I thought someone was going to get 10, 15 points. And I thought, okay, I'll make some money. But it was crazy how much, looking back, I was uneducated in the space.
That's in general. I mean, that's like a lot, the same story we hear from almost everyone who's getting their start in it, and what they used to do compared to what they did when they learned top-down betting, like you just explained. Give us a little bit of background on your finance and your MBA and how that sort of shaped the way you approach betting.
Yeah, so my bachelor's was in finance, and I actually did some wealth management for National Bank, BNY Mellon, right? I did some portfolio analysis, so I understand diversification of portfolios, right? And then I worked various corporate roles from an analyst for like procurement to calculate savings. And then I also had some more process-oriented roles where I actually physically documented processes. I tried to make them more efficient. And like both of those kind of jobs, right, or kind of career paths have something in common. It's just kind of there's patterns in the universe, right? And for me, numbers and processes make sense and they're repeatable, right? Versus kind of an intuition. That's not something you can measure. So I've always been someone who's very about measuring and metrics and like being able to take that same mentality and apply it to betting and being able to kind of try different things and iterate on that process and learn what processes work versus what processes don't. It's just really, if you break it down to that basic of a science, and then the numbers, if you understand, right, finance and numbers, one, diversification. So the more volume, more bets you could get down, the higher percentage chance, if you're betting with an edge, that you're going to end up being profitable, right? And then also understanding the law of large numbers. Just if you do something repeated over time, right, everything's going to kind of stabilize to the outcome that it should be. And those two principles were huge in kind of like grounding my kind of betting mentality. And then you add on top of that, I understand that I find this conversation interesting, but we don't have to dive too deep into it. But like an 8% ROI on the stock market versus an 8% ROI betting is so different, right? But being able to wrap your head and around that math and understand why it's different and why it would be beneficial if you could get an 8% ROI betting compared to the S&P. It's all one big math game. And if you're rooted in math and process, I feel like you have a lot better chance of being successful than kind of trying to go based off of feelings.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people on Twitter have tried to clown me for having like a 4% ROI.
Yeah,
I literally wager like $3 million a month or something. Like, how the heck are you gonna clown? Not
right,
maybe not 3 million, but like.
They don't understand that ROI is based on that amount wagered, right? That total amount wagered versus, and your initial investment was only a fraction of that,
Exactly.
right? Versus like
dude, I
your
roll through the same
ROI
30 grand a day,
Exactly. Your ROI on the S&P is your initial investment and then kind of whatever compounding you get from that, but you're not literally like, it's almost like injecting your initial investment again and again into it. It's kind of a cheat code.
Yeah, the compounding effect is insane, especially when you're starting. And, at this point, in my bankroll, Nick's bankroll, a little bit too much to put into play every single day. So the compounding effect isn't as big as it was when we started. But when you have $2,000, you put that into play. Let's say you earn 4%, and now you're working with that extra 4% to put back into the market. That compounding effect is huge.
Yeah, just for context, right? Like if I started with $1,500 this year in my bankroll, and I'm up to nearly 10K, right? You're talking about over a 400% increase on my initial investment, but my ROI on Pickett shows like 7%, right? A 7% ROI on that 1,500 initial investment on the S&P 500 would be less than $150. Mm-hmm. So it's just being able to understand the actual math and taking the time to learn that math, right? I had that benefit, kind of back to your question, of having a finance background. So it wasn't all foreign to me. I was able to kind of maybe expedite some of it, but really taking the time to learn it and listen to people who are kind of giving out. There's a ton of people giving out information for free, and really taking the time just to absorb it all.
Yeah, having that sort of background that you do, and your ability to share and sort of teach some of this, some of the financial piece, the metrics piece, to some of the potential subs in Edge Zone, I think it's huge value, man. What else do you see yourself bringing to the community?
Yes, I would love to just kind of remind the community that, especially with DFS, right, variance is very real. And it's a mentality thing too, right? There's days that I feel like I can't miss. There's days that I feel like I can't hit anything. There's days that I feel like I cooked up some great slips and none of them hit. And then I feel like there's other days that I feel like all my slips are gonna be wrong and like I end up kind of being profitable at the end of the day. So just kind of like trusting the process, assuming that you're doing things the right way. If not, I mean, obviously adjust, but kind of just remind everybody that it's part of the process. But in addition to that, I would love to continue to expand my game into like arbing, and I do some of the social sports books as well. So I'll take straight bets on Fliff and Rebet. So I'll be giving those out on the community as well. I want to expand into Onyx odds. I haven't quite gotten into that one yet, but I do those social sports books, and if I find any ARB opportunities with no vig, I'll drop those in the Edge Zone Discord. So that's kind of in addition to the DFS, right? And like you all know, right? We're gonna have to be on top of it because the best DFS lines don't stay forever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just making sure that if you're interested in following, you have those notifications on, because I do not recommend tailing my slips if they have multipliers on them, and kind of reminding the group, like, if the value changes, even if it's by half a point, right? It's no longer the same bet.
Right.
And just teaching that and reminding people that is going to be part of the process. I'm excited for it.
Talk to us about, you said you started this whole journey back in, January, February time. So football is pretty much over, but you definitely had time with NBA. You've had time now with MLB. Is there a season, between those two that you think was easier or harder? And then kind of also between the different sites that you use, like Underdog, Bettor, Prize Picks, like, are there any that you find a lot more value on compared to others and stuff like that?
So I feel like basketball came a little bit more naturally to me. Maybe that's because I played high school basketball. So kind of the points, like I understood the statistics and I watched that more regularly. Baseball, I feel like I'm getting more successful at it, but it took me a little while, right? Because I had never really understood the stats behind baseball, an HRR versus a run versus, I obviously know what a home run is, a single, a double, right? But then like how often things are to happen, right? It took me a little while do I prefer over HRRs? Do I prefer under HRRs? Kind of depends who it is. And that's a personal preference thing sometimes, right? Like I tend to view baseball as a lower scoring game. So I'm more inclined to maybe take an under run than an over run. But if the value is there, I don't, at the end of the day, discriminate against, I take value wherever I can find it. But I do have personal preferences, especially kind of being a little bit more of a conservative bettor. I do think I found more value in NBA, just because, especially right before game time, those lineup announcements, lineup moves, there's so much value, like 30 minutes, an hour before game time, when because the DFS sites are just so slow to move. And I was very profitable in March, across the books. I was just getting down a ton of volume, for that last month of NBA for my standards at that point. Anyways, I was getting down a ton of volume. And I found that Underdog, Dabble were super profitable for those like two books. Bettor has been consistently a cash cow for me, but to be honest, like I play mostly those discounts, five-man slips, and that's what part of the reason my ROI there has been so big. But I'm not scared. Another thing with Bettor, even though it's not always optimal, right? You want to try to get those minus 121 lines by doing a five-man slip. I'm not scared to take, if the discount's good enough, I'm not scared to take it as a two-man, right? Because that's still plus EV, right? And I'm not trying to necessarily force a five-man if the value's not there. But I've been incredibly profitable on bettor in terms of a percentage, and it's actually been my most consistent. The rest of them, it could be an up and down ride, right? Like Dabble, I had like a 20% ROI to start, and then I went down down to like 5% because I lost a bunch in baseball, and then I've rebounded back on Dabble, right? These last few months, I don't know if they went on summer break or if they gave their trader some PTO, if they fired a trader, I don't know what it is, but there's been a ton of value there. And then it's also noticing there's times throughout the day that there could be value, right? You never know when value is going to pop out, but like there are repeatable trends, right? Like I happen to, at this point, my body wakes me up and I check things at like midnight. I'll check things at 3, 4 in the morning. I'll check things at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's just because you never know when you're going to find value. But there are times that you notice if you're kind of looking long enough that you'll find that there's value for certain apps, and it's being able to identify those trends.
Yeah, helping someone create a schedule that works for them, understanding how much time they have to devote to it, when they can get on, from your experience, like, having access to you inside the edge zone and being able to ask these questions and have your help and for folks to develop these sort of things, it's just so beneficial. Not starting from scratch, like you may have or others have and figuring all this out, but asking the right questions to get ahead much quicker. That's what we're trying to bring is this one-stop shop for so many types of value, DFS, top-down, model projections, just everything we want to do inside the edge zone and having the right components and the right people in the right place to supply that value.
Yeah, and just like the stuff we've learned through trial and error, right? There's value to that because for just something as small as like knowing what apps might account for correlation for golf versus which ones don't. Right? That's an extra edge that you could give yourself if you're taking the right plays or understanding, for example, how Dabble rockets work, right? That you need at least 4 legs, but then like that's basically like a profit boost for your parlay, right? So understanding those little things that repeatedly over the long term will give you a profitable edge.
Yeah, see, I had no clue about either one of those things. So
yeah,
that's me not being, in tune with the DFS markets and stuff. And absolutely, I mean, that's, information that people would pay for, right? Like you said, I mean, just to streamline the whole education thing, like, dude, back in the day when I came across Billy Collins and Alex Monahan on YouTube, like, if I could have fucking paid $100 to be a part of something where I could talk to Alex and get his input on shit, then I fucking would have. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think the value is, we're bringing a lot more than just slips and plays and tools. I think, just having us all in one place is what's missing in the entire market and community right now. And I think we're going to be the first ones to
growth.
create that.
Yep.
So.
It's growth across the board, right? For all accounts, right? For us as well as people coming into the community, on the other end, it's a community to share and learn and grow and become the most profitable, bettors that we can be in this space. And it takes all of us to do that. And that's what we want to create.
Yeah, and the really cool part is just like, I mean, most of these people that join the community, at least not a lot of them are doing this full time, right? So they can't spend the amount of time like understanding some of these apps maybe to the in-depth that we do, right? And us just being able to kind of expedite that process and help them through that is going to be a huge value, I think, for them. And ultimately, like they could continue on about their life if they choose to end up doing this full time. I mean, I'm someone who's attempting to do that, right? I'm working towards that. And I think others can do it if they take the time to educate themselves and learn and just grow steadily and not be reckless about it, because it could get just out of control quickly. It could, if you do it wrong, things could go south. So it's doing it intelligently. And like I said, as long as it's rooted in process, I do encourage people to kind of pursue it as a side hustle, because I used to do it while I still had my corporate job, and I stepped away and I've been doing this since.
Very similar stories across the board. Once that light switch goes on and you really understand, like you explained a lot of the math behind this earlier, Well, you can see it up front and you can test it, but once you feel it, once you see the profits roll in, and really it's a matter of scaling at that point. Once you understand, it's like, well, how do I inject more into the market? How do I raise my ROI? All these things that you sort of learn through practice that we can help you get ahead of. Best ways to start, how much should you start with, best books, all those kind of things can be developed in our one-on-one coaching.
Yeah, and things are constantly evolving. Sorry, last thing. Things are constantly changing, right? So we'll be able to kind of like provide those updates to people as things change. Like when Prize Picks just changed their 3-mans from a 5x to a 6x, right? Like that changes how you bet. So just as the landscape develops and kind of evolves over time, we'll be on top of that.
I love it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alexis, as we wrap up, man, we'd like to end all these with a piece of advice, man. So if you could give one piece of advice to someone out there looking to get serious about betting, what would that be?
Yeah, I would just say kind of start with something that you could afford to lose, put it in your apps, open up to as many apps as you have available to you, right? Even in a pretty restricted state like Florida, considerably, right? I don't have FanDuel, I don't have DraftKings Pick Six, I don't have DraftKings, I don't have MGM, I don't have Caesars. Go on, the list goes on, right? But I still have 9 apps that I play on a pretty regular daily basis. And that could really be more if I really wanted to continue to dive into other ones. Just so start with something you can lose, but enough where you could spread out across different apps. Make sure you kind of understand how those different apps work. Start small, but you never know where the value is going to be, right? That's why. So even if you have a relatively small bankroll, kind of don't just put it all into one app. Diversify it across a few different apps if you could. As you grow it, diversify into more apps, because at the end of the day, there could be a ton of value in one app one day and absolutely no value in another app another day. And you want to make sure you have that liquidity and you want to be able to take advantage of that when it's there. And then start small until you kind of prove to yourself that you're winning. Track your bets. Make sure you're kind of making sure that you're progressing forward and that you're increasing your bankroll, not losing it. If you start to lose it, reevaluate what you're doing, but start small and kind of grow progressively.
Yeah, the concept stays the same throughout your journey. And we would suggest you start small, just like Alexis said, because you really just need that data. That's the most valuable thing to you up front, is what works and what doesn't.
Yep.
So getting in at volume, understanding, where the edges are by not having to drop a bunch of money. Don't look at it as profit up front. Look at it as data gathering and a way to really get ahead long term. And then you scale as those things make sense to you. You up your bet sizes. I mean, God knows what, our father's bet size is nowadays. But, same process for me. I've upped it over time, and now I can throw a couple hundred on a play and not be that affected by it. When before that would have absolutely made me shake, when I started doing this. But the process doesn't change. It's just your trust and your bankroll that changes to be able to allow you to scale in that manner.
Yep.
Absolutely. Nick, any final thoughts here as we close up, brother?
No, man, I think this was a great interview. Thank you, Alexis, for taking the time out of your day to jump on this, man. Again, I think you're going to be a huge asset for Shane and I's personal betting and along with everybody else that's going to join the Edge Zone, man. And looking forward to seeing what you provide in there and learning from you and just hearing all the feedback from the community, man. But yeah, no, that's it. Thank you so much, guys. And, we don't have an exact date yet, but just be on the lookout. A link should be coming out pretty soon for pre-registration for the Discord, launching 100% before the end of the month.
Awesome. And thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to join and excited to launch and grow with you guys and grow the Discord. Let's do this.
Let's do it, bro.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
All right, y'all. Take care.
That's a wrap on today's show. We want to thank Alexis for joining us, and we're excited to have him on board as an exclusive contributor here at Edge Zone. Tremendous value for sure. Ahead of that, just as Nick mentioned, we will be releasing a limited pre-registration link so you can lock in early and be a part of the launch from day one. So stay tuned, follow us at Edge Zone HQ on X, and we'll see you in the Edge Zone.